Welcome back to my gear garage, everybody. I'm Eric Hansen with BackpackingTV. Today, we are going to be looking at tents. Tents is one of the main gear purchases for any backpacker out there, and it can be an overwhelming choice to make. I want to break it down and make it simple for you. Before we get into the video, I'd like to ask a quick favor to subscribe here to the channel and have an open mind. Give us that thumbs up when you think that we've earned it here. It really helps us get our message out to the outdoorsy world. So, without further ado, let's get intense. Tents are obviously one of the main building blocks of backpacking. It's one of the key things that you need to be buying or acquiring somehow in order to go on your first backpacking trip. So there's a lot of different decisions to weigh, and I want to try to make it real simple and clear. And I want to break down some of the different price points and things that you should be considering. So let's talk about them. First of all, let's talk about price. Luckily, tents are one of the things that I think that you can actually do a good job of getting away with a cheap option. So obviously, there's a lot of gearheads out there that love to be ounce counters and love to shave that weight. And then therefore, every time that you do that, you're going to be jacking up the price. But tents are one of those categories that I think it's perfectly acceptable to go with a more budget option. But that being said, I want to tell you what you're actually going to be getting by spending a little bit extra coin on that tent. So right in front of me here, I have 3 different two-person backpacking tents. And you can really start to see, it's pretty clear, the different size and weight of these tents that are all comparable. You can go backpacking with any of these options. Obviously, as you go down the line, you're going to be spending more money, but you're going to be saving a lot of weight as you do it. So here is my super ultralight 2-pound tent that I love. It is awesome, but it has its limitations as well, being super ultralight. This is also an ultralight tent, but it is another pound heavier, so it's not as extreme. And this is a 2-person ultralight tent from Marmot. And then this is like your mid-grade backpacking tent. Average, costs about $200, but it weighs nearly 5 pounds. So quite a bit different here, and obviously also quite a bit different size. But it's still a perfectly good tent. And then also, I just did a quick little internet search for an additional option from Walmart. And I found a really good, solid 2-person backpacking tent that Coleman makes for $65. So I want to talk about all of the different ways that you could save some money, and then also what you're actually going to be getting with that. If I take a quick look here, let's go with the $65 version first. It's the Coleman Sundome 2-person tent. Literally costs $64.46. In my mind, that is a pretty dang good value. But what are you going to be getting with that? Obviously, it's going to be heavier. That one weighs in at 7 pounds, well, nearly 8 pounds. So that is pretty heavy. This is 5 pounds, and I think this is a pretty heavy tent. 8 pounds is honestly pretty massive. But if you're only doing some short trips, or maybe 95% of your campouts are just in your backyard or out of a car, then hey, this $65 tent is going to be just fine, and you can get away with it. So maybe save your money and put it more towards a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad setup that's going to be really nice. But there's nothing wrong with this. It's definitely going to be bulkier and heavier, and probably not as weatherproof, or like if a big storm is rolling in. It might be waterproof if it's just a light rain, but if it's really heavy wind, it might be having a hard time keeping upright or withstanding the rigors of a big storm. So that would be why you should go kind of more into the real core backpacking tents, as opposed to like the Walmart and Sportsman options that are really more designed for car campers, people who aren't going far, who aren't carrying that tent very far, and who probably aren't going to be in any sort of extreme weather. Okay, so that's like the 65, like the sub $100 tent category. Perfectly fine, but if you think that you're going to be doing, say, 2 backpacking trips or more, it's probably worth actually investing in a real core backpacking tent. Okay, let's get that guy out of the way and let's talk about your core backpacking tents here. So this is your mid-grade, basically just an average backpacking tent. Costs just over $200, and there's nothing special about this tent, but it's a perfectly capable backpacking tent that I have done many trips in myself. So weighing in at about 5 pounds, that to me is like your kind of average category. 4 to 6 pounds is an average weighted backpacking tent. It's not light, but it's not ultra heavy either. So what you're going to get with this is a tent that's capable of handling most storms that come your way. It's got a nice pole structure set up that's going to be able to handle heavy rain, heavy wind, possibly even some decent snowfall, anything that you might encounter on a average backpacking trip. Even getting into that inclement weather, you're going to be just fine. So when you're thinking about where to spend your money on backpacking gear, these price points can really add up between your backpack, your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your tent, your water filter, all of those things. And I think that your tent is actually a good opportunity to save some money off the bat as you're getting into backpacking. If you really are going to become more of a extreme or avid backpacker who does it all the time, then you can start moving into these ultralight categories and be willing to spend some more money. So this right here is it's technically an ultralight tent. It's under 4 pounds. It's right over 3. It's 3 pounds 5 ounces. So that technically makes it an ultralight tent. But it's not a super extreme ultralight tent either. So, but this is actually a tent that is kind of my go-to tent for almost all scenarios because it does a really nice job of being a spacious tent that can comfortably sleep 2 people, can withstand heavy weather, and is lightweight and compact to carry. So I actually really love this grade of tent, and this is going to be about a $400 tent. So that's getting pricey, but it's not also super, super extreme like they can get as we get into the really ultralight tents. So this tent over here, this is the Bolt tent. And I just want to also say all 3 of these tents are Marmot tents. This is not explicitly an endorsement of Marmot. It just happens to be what I have on hand. So I just wanted to use these as a good, like, hey, this is what we've got here. But there's lots of great tent manufacturers out there that I love. And so don't get too distracted by the fact that these are all Marmot here. This is the Marmot Bolt. It is 2 pounds and, well, let's check it. 2 pounds 4 ounces. So that is pretty dang light. And how they're actually getting a tent that light means there's less fabric. There are fewer poles. The tent stakes themselves are really small and lightweight as well. And this is an awesome tent. I really like it a lot. Obviously, carrying a 2-pound tent feels like I'm not even carrying a tent at all. So I really, really do love that. However, the drawback for getting a tent like this, one, price. It's like a $550 tent. But also, I had the worst night of my life actually sleeping in this tent. I was camping atop a mountain in Sweden when an unexpected snowstorm moved in with heavy, heavy winds. And because this is such a lightweight tent, it could not handle it at all. It literally was getting blown down and falling apart. And I had to take it down in the middle of this snowstorm and trek through a snowstorm trying to find a physical mountain building that was abandoned, but I spent the night in there because this tent couldn't handle the rigors of that storm. So when you're going for super ultra light, what probably is happening is that there's less structure to the tent, which is where they're saving their weight from, which is great if you're in mild or general weather backpacking conditions. But if it ever turns super extreme or you get a big dump of snow, it's probably going to collapse on you. So that is something to be aware of when you're making your tent decision here. This tent has a lot more tent pole structure, the ability to put out guy lines, things like that, things that add weight, but it makes it withstand your weather a lot better. Okay, so those are kind of like the price breakdowns and what you're getting on weight. Let's talk about what size of a tent is a good size to get. Now, for almost all backpackers out there, especially general backpackers, the two-person backpacking tent is kind of the sweet spot. It's great for backpacking solo. If you are backpacking solo, you have enough room to sleep in there by yourself. You have enough room to put your gear, all of your gear, inside next to you where another person might sleep. Now, if you do have a partner that you're backpacking with, you can comfortably sleep in a two-person tent, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in that tent, and then you can have your gear on the outside in your vestibule. So that is a great thing. That's most people are either going by themselves or going with probably a person, whether it's a romantic partner, just a friend, or whatever. There's enough space in there for it not to get awkward. So the two-person tent is great. Most people want that. The only time I would say recommend a three-person tent is, let's say you are a couple and you want to have a baby with you as well. Having that extra space might be really, really important to you. Or if you have a dog that's backpacking with you and two people, that room for that third person can be really nice to have. So when I go backpacking with my partner and our dog, we have a three-person tent that we go backpacking with. It's lightweight, and yet it's comfortable to have myself, my girlfriend, and our dog all in the tent with us all night long. Okay, next category is seasons of tents. Now, these are all 3-season tents. However, there is a 4-season category out there as well, so a tent that's capable of being set up and lived in winter conditions. That is really for extreme or highly specialized backpacking. And I don't recommend you investing any sort of money in a 4-season backpacking tent. Actually, let me show you my 4-season tent. This behemoth is a 4-season tent. It is a monster. It weighs just about 10 pounds. It's massive. It is hard, cumbersome to pack, to carry. It's heavy. It's huge. It's also what you need if you're going to be doing some really winter heavy, alpine camping up. I literally was camping up in the Rockies in the winter, and that's what it's for. So alpine camping, but this is not your average backpacking tent. It's also about $1,000. So that is a significant investment to make. And really, it's almost unnecessary for 98% of your backpacking market out there. So let's just get that out of the way. You really don't need this puppy.
Okay, so right now I'm setting up the 3 different tents so we can actually see how they look when they're physically set up. So this is the ultralight version of this tungsten that's right over here. It's kind of a mid-grade tent. Ultralight, pretty light. My dog here is very excited about us doing this. This is our heaviest tent. This is the middle tent, and that's the super ultralight down there. So one of the things that you're going to notice with tents is how easy they set up. This uses like a hub system, so these tent poles connect in the center. It makes it really simple in order to actually set up. You can see this is where they connect. It takes a lot of the thought process out of actually doing this. So it's really straightforward to just hook those up. Very simple. Oh, we're in my backyard in Flagstaff, Arizona, and every time we try to do one of these videos, we get a snowstorm. So just is what it is. It's always a good idea, I think, to set up a tent in your backyard before you actually get out and are backpacking, because sometimes they're not super intuitive. This one over here that I will point to in just a second, the super ultralight, is the definition of not super intuitive in how to set it up. So when I was talking inside my gear garage as to about how to see the 2 differences in designs, this is a really clear example now. This is my ultralight tent, my very, very ultralight. It weighs about 2 pounds. And one of the ways in which it cuts down on weight is its tent pole design. There's just this one spine central running through the whole tent from front to back. And then this secondary pole that's really just creating your lateral width. And then the rest of the structure is entirely dependent upon my stakes giving it tension. There's not even any tent pole support in the back. It's entirely just being staked out. And you can really see here that I only have headroom right here. Everywhere else, there's no space to sit up. So if I want to be spending a lot of time in my tent, this maybe isn't the best choice for me. And I might prefer something like this that has a lot more roomy nature to it. It's got vertical walls, so I could be sitting up pretty much anywhere from here to here through this whole rectangle. It's got 2 doors. This only has 1 door. So if I want to be getting out, there's only one way to get out here. Whereas if I want to get out over here, I have my own door. Say my girlfriend or my hiking partner can also get out from this other side super, super easily. Tent poles are going to obviously weigh a lot, but another way that tents tend to save weight is on the fabric itself. This is a really light mesh, and all of these waterproof points are also really, really light, like down here and on the fly itself. The fly is where a lot of the weight savings is going to come. And here I want to step over to my mid-grade, kind of average backpacking tent to show you the difference. These zippers are way thicker. They're much more easy to manufacture, but they're a lot heavier as well. The tent poles themselves are heavier. The actual mesh here is thicker. It's not as fine. And then this fabric down here, in which we'll also see on the rainfly itself, it feels like you can like almost measure it between your fingers, the thickness of it. So it is way thicker. It doesn't pack down as tight, and it's just as waterproof, but it is not nearly as light. So if I'm hiking with a dog, this would be a great tent to have because there's obviously a lot more room for me, but there's also more room for a dog. And because this material is thicker, it's going to be more resistant to dog paws, dog claws, things like that. Less worried about kovu sticking a toenail through the floor, as in my Ultralight. That's such a fine fabric that it's probably a little more delicate. Both are going to be plenty waterproof, but this one, I wish the feel could come through in the video. It is really fine. It is very light. You can see my fingers through there really. It is a very light nylon there. This one is much thicker. So it has a lot more weight to it, which is why it's going to be less expensive and easier to manufacture and therefore cheaper.
Okay, that is a lot of things to talk about with tents, but to just reiterate, this is a great tent for almost, I'd say 85% of the backpackers out there. Just go for that 4 to 6 pound tent, $200. You're good to go. And then as you get more experience and as you decide to get more lean in your setup, then you can invest down the line in an ultralight setup. I hope that simplifies things for you in your purchasing decisions when you're just getting into backpacking, kind of breaking it down for you. If you did like this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, make sure that you are staying tuned to all of our content. And if you have any thoughts about tents that I didn't cover here, please let me know. I always love learning from our amazing community that we got going on here at Backpacking TV. Okay, that's it. That was intense. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Eric Hansen. I'll see you later.